Hello, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on WJOPLP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9, and will also be available on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and today I am just delighted to welcome Jane Winchell here. She's the Sarah Fraser Robbins Director of Peabody Essex Museum's Dotty Brown Art and Nature Center. And I'm actually welcoming Janie back because she appeared on the show a few months ago about the amazing and wonderful narwhal exhibit. Today, she's here to talk about an equally wonderful and enchanting exhibit called Knowing Nature, Stories of the Boreal Forest, which is currently showing at PEM through September 27, 2026. And it was developed by the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Service. And it includes, as I've told Janie, some of the most stunning nature photography I have ever seen. So first of all, Janie, welcome, and thank you so much for coming back to the morning show.
Well, thank you for having me back. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about this amazing exhibit. And let's start at the beginning then, Janie. Where and what is the Boreal Forest?
So the Boreal Forest is the largest forest ecosystem in the world. About 1 in every 3 trees lives in the Boreal Forest. Wow. So it is truly expansive and globally significant. And most people know virtually nothing about it, especially down where we are here.
Yeah.
And so it's the northernmost forest. Extends up to basically the Arctic Circle, and imagine it like a crown, a green crown around the globe. All of the northern continents have extent of boreal forest. So it spans the entire globe of anything that's not ocean, and has impact across the globe. So made up primarily of evergreens of various types, some of that depending on where in the world you might be. But the firs, the spruces, pines, as well as some deciduous trees like alder and birch, are the predominant species of the boreal forest. And it's in terms of where we are, you can have experiences with the boreal even here in Massachusetts. So although it's really, once you get into Canada, that you get these massive expanses of it, the summit and ridge of even Greylock Mountain in Western Massachusetts can give you that kind of island experience of the boreal, if you will. These boreal islands are distributed throughout New England as you go up in elevation.
So interesting.
If you like to hike, or if you want to drive up Mount Washington or Mount Greylock, you will, especially once you've been to the exhibition, you will start to go, oh, all right, I understand now what the boreal is, because it is a composition of species. And that's why it's primarily in the northern latitudes, because it provides the right conditions for those tree species to grow.
And it is, as you've conveyed, it's vast, and it circumnavigates the whole subarctic terrain all around the planet. And then that way it's a unifying force, and it's undeveloped, which makes it totally precious for all of us. Well, let's talk about who lives there, Jane. What kind of animals depend upon and live in the boreal forest?
Right. So many species. It's very biodiverse. And supports, I think it's like 85 different animal species, tens of thousands of insect species. And in particular, it's very significant for birds and migratory birds in particular. We can come back to that, but also it's a really important place for people.
Hmm.
So it has been a long-standing home for many Indigenous peoples
Hmm.
and continues to be. So people have actually been part of the Boreal Forest history since its origins.
Hmm.
Um, Very different when we think about tropical forests, which have been in existence for, in some instances, tens of millions of years.
Mm.
The the boreal forest has only been around as long as the last retreating ice age.
Yeah.
The glaciers retreating created the conditions for the boreal forest. So um, essentially, from the time the forest was growing into existence, you had people there,
Hmm.
people in coexistence in the fabric of the boreal forest.
Hmm. Well, we want to go back and talk more about the indigenous peoples. But talking about the animals, some of the animal photography was among the most striking to me. There was a gorgeous picture of a wolf, which we will be able to show folks.
Oh,
And
good.
also the caribou, the migrating
Oh,
caribou was also just stunning, the hordes of caribou. And for me, it's just I don't know, it restored my spirits to see the numbers of wild animals still free in a territory that's their own. And so if you're looking for inspiration, the photography of some of the animals will just restore your spirit to know they have this domain that is it primarily belongs to them. And for me, that's just refreshing. Now, you mentioned the birds too, and
mhm.
in the boreal forest, I didn't know that it's referred to as a bird nursery, but that got
Yeah.
my attention. Could you say a little bit more about why people refer to it as a bird nursery?
Yes. It over 50% of the birds in North America, the 50% of the species of North American birds rely on the boreal forest for
Hmm.
survival. We have upwards of 3 million, 2 to 3 million birds that migrate to the
Wow.
boreal all the way from South America
Yeah.
every spring. And that can be songbirds, including warblers, but it's also super important for waterfowl and
Hmm.
shorebirds, of which we see many coming through here on the North Shore,
Yeah.
Newbury and Plum Island,
Yeah.
being one of the places people go. Those birds, many of them are on their way to the boreal forest. So at the end of the summer, so really starting about now, after those birds have nested and raised their young, they're starting to fly south, and that can be 3 to 5 billion birds. So it
Wow.
is staggering in
It
many
is
ways.
staggering. Yeah, it
The
really is.
numbers, the statistics around the boreal forest are, I find, kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
And that aspect of the boreal forest impact for species of migratory birds that we see even in our backyard
Hmm.
is just so impressive and um, a wonder. It is a wonder,
It is
truly.
a wonder. It's just beggars the imagination how those birds travel as far as they do during their migration. And here in Newburyport, we do have the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, but that's just a rest stop.
Yes,
For many of those, their destination for breeding is the boreal forest. And so it's wonderful. There are certainly a lot of birders who care very much about birds. And I think one of the great things about your exhibit at PIM is that birders can go and see, this is where they're going. This is where they wind up.
right.
And then they'll just stop back by here, our highway rest stop, on their way to point south. As cold, the light is changing already. It's only August, but
Mhm.
and the swallows on the refuge are starting their feeding orgy on
Right.
bayberries and insects. So that goes on through the months of August. So it was just it's a stunning kind of. It's hard for you to even imagine that many birds. On the other hand, the boreal forest is vast. And so it's good to hold those two things, vast numbers of birds and a vast forest that provides summer breeding grounds for them.
Well,
Well,
I was
Jane, oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I was just going to touch on, you mentioned like the fact that it's intact being so
yeah.
And I just want to hone in on that because it's the fact that the Canadian boreal represents one of the last mostly intact forests in the world that we really want to be paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Those uninterrupted tracks are essential to the functioning of the boreal. You start breaking it up into patches, it's no longer the kind of system
Yeah.
that is supporting those billions of birds migrating there.
Yeah.
Just to name, one group of organisms that are relying on the boreal for
Yeah.
survival.
Yeah, as someone I know once said, when any animal, including birds, have an intact habitat, they take care of themselves. But when their habitat is disrupted, that's when those species really get in trouble because we use the word system as an ecosystem for a reason, because it is a whole system of interdependent beings. So, um,
Yes.
yeah. So, is there more we should understand about the environmental impact or importance, I should say, or even urgency of the boreal forest for all of us, really?
Yes, absolutely. We down here, though we may feel removed from the Canadian boreal, we are affecting it every day.
Hmm.
And we are affected every day by the boreal
Hmm.
forest. The smoke that we've
Mm.
been encountering often in
Wildfires,
the
yeah,
summer, yep,
yeah.
those wildfires are in the Canadian boreal.
Hmm.
So oftentimes the news reports are just referring to the fact that they are in Canada,
Yeah.
referencing that they are actually in this boreal forest
Hmm.
zone. So many more wildfires have been happening, much greater loss of acreage from intense fires that are burning for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So that is a consequence. That increasing intensity of fires and the duration of them is a direct consequence of a warming climate,
Hmm.
which is drying out the boreal and setting the conditions for these intensive fires.
Yeah.
The boreal is a place where fires is a natural part of the system,
Hmm.
but those are small fires that burn out.
Hmm.
These ones are very hot and last
Yeah.
in long periods of time, and they're starting much earlier in the season. It's normally historically it's been a fall episode. Well, we
Mm.
know it wasn't a fall episode this time. There
Yeah.
were serious fires in June, followed by the ones we've been getting the smoke from. Just because we're not getting the smoke now doesn't mean the fires have gone out. It's just
Yeah.
the winds have redirected. So the things we do here for climate stabilization are critical for the boreal
Yeah.
because it is heating faster than most places on the planet. And um, we're seeing the effects of that. So there's real urgency regarding our bringing um, carbon levels under control.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so that's a very direct way that we can be making difference, even in the kind of more, all right, well, some of those things we can be getting the word out, we can be lobbying with our representatives and so
Hmm.
forth. But we can even be doing things in our own home that can
Mm.
actually make quite a difference.
Hmm.
So the choice of the toilet paper we buy,
Yeah.
for many people, they're not realizing that when they're buying often a name brand toilet paper, unless it's saying that it's made from recycled paper, it can actually be from virgin
Mm.
boreal forest,
Mm.
not just replanted boreal forest,
Yeah.
but original boreal forest.
Yeah.
And versus recycled toilet paper made or toilet paper made from recycled paper can be essentially a third of that paper influence or the harvesting wood harvesting influence. So I encourage people to do that because
Mm-hmm.
it may feel like a small step, but we as consumers also are making choices that have those kinds of impact. So that's just one example.
Yeah. But it's a good example. That stood out to me. I wasn't aware that it was, virgin forest that was being cut down to make toilet paper. So I made a resolution. And I think a lot of people don't know that. And it's clearly environmental responsibility is one of the themes of the exhibit as you go through it.
Yeah.
And also, every tree you cut down, you're cutting down something that is doing us the favor of sequestering carbon for us as
Yes.
well, because that carbon remains in that tree. And I don't remember, I didn't take notes on the statistics about how much carbon the boreal forest sequesters, but it's a lot.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. Um,
Good, which is why
to,
you're here.
um, 2 to 3 times the carbon of what is sequestered by tropical forests. And
Mm,
we hear a lot about the tropical
yeah,
forests. So that's why I make that as the
yeah.
comparison. What's really interesting here too is most of that carbon, unlike in a tropical forest where the carbon is sequestered primarily in the tree itself, some in the soil, the vast majority of the carbon that's sequestered in the boreal is in the peat.
Yeah.
That 7 feet to 10 feet deep layer of sphagnum moss that has then essentially died and created layer upon layer upon layer
Hmm.
that is super rich in carbon. Not that there isn't carbon in the trees as well, but when you compare,
Hmm.
that's really essential. And another reason why so much of a concern that the drying out of the boreal leading to fires because those fires are burning into the peat.
Yeah.
It's the peat, which ordinarily is wet
Hmm.
and holding water, is then actually fuel for fire. Because if it dries out,
Right.
it's just burning. We even had some of that kind of effect in the fires that we had here. Was it last year? Um, where it was burning into the forest duff.
Mm,
And firefighters were having a hard time putting it out
yeah.
because of the fact that it's underground. Well, magnify that up in the boreal
Hmm.
with millions of acres,
Yeah.
and you start getting like a very serious impact.
Yeah. You have a planet aflame. So,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I also wanted to ask you, you started mentioning the presence of indigenous peoples for ages upon ages in the boreal forest.
Yeah.
And I was struck by the number of different indigenous groups
Mm.
that live in the boreal forest. So first, let's start us off there. How many different indigenous peoples, different groups of peoples live in the boreal forest?
So at this time, there's about 600 indigenous
Wow.
communities living across the boreal forest. Most of the indigenous groups in Canada are living in the boreal.
Hmm.
So it is hugely important to indigenous peoples, their way of life, their survival, their cultural integrity.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a lot in the exhibition. I'm always very mindful. I'm not an indigenous person. I am so inspired by indigenous people and the indigenous ways of knowing and
Yeah.
being. Um, but I try not to be speaking on behalf of, and
Yeah.
that's generally IPHEM. We
Hmm.
are very mindful of when indigenous voices are present in an exhibition,
Hmm.
we want them to speak for themselves. And in this show, even there were a number of indigenous advisors working on the exhibition that was developed by the Smithsonian. So just putting that out, and offering that before I'm saying anything. But there's quite a bit that is represented through the Indigenous people themselves speaking
Hmm.
from their perspective in the exhibition, both in a video with a number of Indigenous people who speak so soulfully, I think,
Yeah.
about this inextricable connection that they have with the land, that they are part of the land,
Yeah.
that there is no difference between themselves and all the kin of living species which they share that place with. Um, and the aspect of reciprocity feels so vital and essential
Hmm.
um, to us as non-Indigenous people, but learning from Indigenous people who have lived on the land for thousands of
Yeah.
years sustainably and honoring
Hmm.
that place. Um, I just find that there's a lot of wisdom in the messaging of um, the people that are included in the show, and recognizing that um, they express a sentiment of, in order to know us, you also need to know the land
Hmm.
because that is part of them, and they are part of the land is part of them, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's really expressed in the artwork also.
Hmm.
So there's a number of pieces that were made for the exhibition by different Indigenous artists in Canada. And those works are both in working with the material that is of the boreal and also speaks to an expression of that relationship. It's not just about making an object or an artwork or a functional artwork. But there is, from the harvesting of that material, from that moment, there is an act of respect,
Hmm. Yeah.
relationship.
Hmm.
Um, we invited Elizabeth James Perry, who's an Aquinnah Wampanoag artist here in Massachusetts, to incorporate some works that she made from the forest, so that we could be reflecting that continuum of artistry, relatedness,
Hmm.
Indigenous ways of knowing and
Hmm.
being, um, from this Native American artist that is equally reflected in the Canadian Indigenous artist works.
Hmm.
Um, and those were works that she was making from materials in the forest here,
Hmm.
species that are both here and in the boreal, because of
Hmm.
course it's not like the boreal, there isn't a hard line on the boreal.
Yeah.
It's more a matter of the percentage of species of certain kinds
Hmm.
of trees in particular. And even the dyes that are made, those are being sourced from the local forests as
Hmm.
well. And having a way for people to be relating to the artworks in the
Hmm.
show, both through the aesthetic lens and the
Hmm.
appreciation of the mastery um, that these artists are exhibiting, but also being present to those works as an expression of relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like earth art that is channeled through the human form. And I really enjoyed that the video that you mentioned with the indigenous conservationists speaking. I found that very moving, and they evoke this sense of the forest and the planet as one being with all of us in a very powerful, very spiritual way. I was really moved by that, appreciated it.
Mm.
Um, well, one of the things, in addition to the art you were just describing, is you include some sensory features in the exhibit,
Yeah.
and I thought were really fun. Would you talk about a couple of those sensory features that try to evoke the presence of the boreal forest as you walk through the exhibit?
Yes, absolutely. And it's really right from when you walk in the door, because we have recordings of birds singing
Yeah.
from the boreal. So all of those were recorded during the nesting season in the Canadian boreal, and that permeates the whole exhibition. Um, and at the same time that you're seeing these projected images, some of which I think you were referring to, Mary, of the
Mhm.
like it's they're just beautiful moments with these different animals and in
Mhm.
these environments. Um, and they're big, it's really blown up on the wall.
Yeah.
And then those are complemented by there's a what we call the forest hub, which is a little immersive zone in the middle of the exhibition where you're surrounded then by an 8 track of different bird songs. So it's
Yeah.
taking the more kind of ambient experience that's elsewhere in the exhibition. Then you are surrounded by all these different birds. There's segments that have the wind. And I really hope people take like a few moments in there to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what I feel that's successful in transporting people.
Yeah.
While they're in there, they can have a tactile
Yeah.
experience with reindeer moss, which is a very common forest floor component in the boreal. That just the majority of the boreal forest is covered in moss. So it's very much of a sensory
Mhm.
experience there, that the softness, the wetness, the being surrounded by evergreens. And so we can capture, we hope,
Yeah.
we try and present some of that in the exhibition for people
Yeah.
to experience.
The moss is incredibly soft. I was struck by just how it was so much fun to touch. I just wanted to stay there with it. Very soothing. Like
Right.
soft as a bunny, and the bunnies are the softest animals.
Yes.
And it's like so you go in this little kind of little sort of pagoda area within the exhibit. And it's like a magic portal, is how I would describe it, into the
Yes. Yeah.
boreal forest. I really
I love
enjoyed it. And
that.
I thought it was very cleverly and very, very, very aesthetically and done and in a way that just taps into your senses. Um, well, Jane, what impact do you hope the exhibit will have on people who visit?
Well, first of all, I hope that people will leave there knowing what the boreal forest is
Yeah.
at the most basic level, because so few of us actually even know what the boreal forest is. There might be, for many of us, there might be this like, oh, I feel like I learned something about the boreal forest
Yeah.
in school, right? But it is so important that we all understand what the
Yeah.
boreal forest is. So at the bottom line, there's that. And then I would certainly hope that people would walk out of there with an appreciation and a sense of awe,
Hmm.
truly,
Yeah.
about this place. And through that, have um, feel motivated, empowered to be acting to help preserve
Yeah.
this such a significant part of our planet. I also really hope people will leave feeling inspired by the efforts of Indigenous people. There's a few examples that are brought into the exhibition of Indigenous people who are taking the lead
Hmm.
in protecting huge areas of the boreal forest
Hmm.
in collaboration with the Canadian government, with the involvement of organizations that are here in the United States, like National Audubon and the
Hmm.
Nature Conservancy. Those kinds of organizations are recognizing how important it is to be in support of
Yeah.
these Indigenous-led efforts. So those are the people who are serving as guardians,
Yeah.
um, who have those deep relationships with the boreal forest and a passion for protecting it, and like that knowledge of what does that involve.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not sort of abstracted idea of what might be necessary, but a lived experience that is hard to replace
Yeah.
with anything else that could be more
Hmm.
significant.
Yeah.
Um, so I know for me that's been an inspiration, and that I really hope people will come away wanting to know more.
Hmm.
This is an exhibit you can come back to
Hmm.
multiple times
Yeah.
because there are so many layers. But
Hmm.
whether people end up having the opportunity to come back or not, um, that they will take the initiative themselves
Hmm.
to be looking into this. Um, and we will be certainly offering programming throughout the run of the exhibition
Hmm.
that is intended to enhance what's in the show, deepen people's understanding of the content, and also introduce them to some of the Indigenous individuals who are
Mm.
really taking steps
Hmm.
to make a difference
Yeah.
for the Royal.
Yeah. You know, I don't remember what naturalist said this, but I remember the quotation that people won't try to save what they don't love. And I think people will fall in love with the boreal forest. I'd
Yeah.
go even further than that. I think people will experience enchantment
Oh,
when they visit the boreal forest. And I think being enchanted, falling in love with, means that people can then be motivated to try to preserve and protect and respect and understand how we're connected to it and how we're all affected if it's the habitat that it provides for all of us and for so many different creatures doesn't survive and thrive. So one more question, Jane. Do you have and it may not be fair to ask, but do you have a favorite part of the exhibit yourself?
oh, well, I will mention something that we haven't touched on yet,
Okay.
which is before you've even gotten into the exhibition in the atrium alcove, we have a huge moss wall.
Oh, yes.
So I want to mention that because that was made specifically for the exhibition, this beautiful 6 foot by 9 foot uh, mass of moss that's dried moss. It's not a
Mhm.
living moss wall, but it was harvested sustainably in southern New Hampshire. A company called Enviro Greenery created this for us. And it is this wonderful moment of like being sort of imagining you are there
Yeah.
in this moss covered enchanted
Yeah.
forest.
Yeah.
And I've been really pleased with that as the experience for people to encounter as they're coming in with this wonderful birch bark canoe model that was
Hmm.
made back 1803,
Mm.
and an Abenaki artist, and then combining that with some footage, drone footage from the boreal to show the variety
Yeah.
of landscapes that make up the
Yeah.
boreal, which includes millions of water bodies
Hmm.
and lakes and rivers. And those rivers and lakes have represented essentially a highway system for Indigenous
Yeah.
people, hence the birch bark canoe.
Yeah.
So thinking very differently about, yeah, how do you get around
Hmm.
in a place that is covered in moss, which is beautiful
Right.
as moss is, that's hard to walk on because
Yeah.
it's soft and it's, underneath the moss is all kinds of things that are decomposing and breaking under your feet. And
Yeah.
so the waterways, incredibly important in the summer as open water bodies. And then in the winter, when they freeze, that's when you're using them on dog sleds,
Right.
snowmobiles, um, skis. And so there's sort of just a different way of relating to how you get around
Mhm.
in such a different kind of forest
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. I love the moss wall. And it's a great introduction to the exhibit. Just makes you eager to kind of get in and see more. Well, Jane, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to talk to you. And I feel like
Thank
I've
you.
revisited the exhibit talking to
Oh,
you, but I've understood more about it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Um,
pleasure.
and anybody who wants more information about the exhibit, you can get that at the PEM website, www.pem.org, and just go to exhibitions and you'll get all the information you need. So thank you so much, Shane. It's always fun to talk to you. And
You're welcome.
I'm sure I'll be back because I was pretty enchanted.
Well, that
So,
would be great. And I would love to see you there, Mary.
all right.
So
Fair enough.
next time you come down, let me
You
know.
bet. I will.
Mm,
I promise.
okay.
Yeah. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. And until then, everybody, please be well.